Hello there ladies and gentlemen, TX141 here, also known as Paul, welcoming you to an all new Ace in a Day gameplay for the arcade mode of War Thunder. In today's episode I shall be reviewing the I-301, a Russian Tier 1 Battle Rating 2.3 premium fighter aircraft. To provide you with a brief historical overview of the plane, we must roll back to 1940 and realise that the I-301 was the successor to the failed Lag-1 prototype known as the I-22. Both aircraft were designed by the trio of Lavochkin-Gorbunov and Gudkov. Following the maiden flight of the I-22 as of March 30, 1940, along with the subsequent test flights that the plane underwent, it was found that the plane suffered from counterintuitive controls, as noted by the pilots, and a lack of performance in the engine department, with the Klimov M105 V12 inline engine of 1050 horsepower not providing a decent climb rate. To counter these problems, a number of minor refinements were made, in addition to the plane having its engine switched out for an uprated, supercharged Klimov M105 PF engine, another inline type, this time providing 1240 horsepower. We should also note that the fuel tank capacity was extended in order to cover a 1000 km range as part of the 2nd of October 1940 requirement laid out to the developers. The I-301, as it was now redesignated, was armed with a single MP6 23mm cannon firing through the propeller hub, a pair of 12.7mm Berezin machine guns mounted above the engine, and a pair of 7.62mm Shikas machine guns also mounted above the engine. The successful test flights of the I-301 leading up to December 1940 highlighted the plane as ready to be converted into development of the Lag-3 as December 1940 rolled off into 1941. Nonetheless, there were still some problems, most notably that the plane was rather heavy, and so to counter this, the range was reduced down to roughly 650 km, and the armament was also reduced to a pair of 12.7mm Berezin machine guns above the engine, and a single 20mm Shvat cannon firing through the propeller hub. And so with our history out of the way, let us see how the plane handles in War Thunder. Ergo, our gameplay for today is taken from the ground strike map Mediterranean Island, using the following setup. Air target belts are our 12.7mm and tracer belts are our 7.62s. The reasons here coincide, with an emphasis of being able to set our opponents on fire and then leave them to burn to death. Whether it be the mixture of armour-piercing incendiary and intermediate adjustment incendiary rounds in the 12.7s, or the sole composition of armour-piercing incendiary tracer rounds on the 7.62s, both belts can achieve this with maximum efficiency, and we add to this with armoured target belts for our 23mm cannon, as 3 of the 4 rounds here contain armour-piercing incendiary rounds, and the 4th is a fragmentation incendiary tracer round, which has a very good chance of acting as a pilot killer or a gunner killer, depending on whether we are attacking a fighter or a bomber. We compile all of this together by using a 500 metre gun convergence, as per the standard on a personal preference for when we have an armament based in the nose. And finally, as per the usual, we are using a 30-minute fuel load to ensure that we can make it to the end of the game. And so within this opening instance of the match, we've already seen that the climb rate of the I-301 is nothing to brag about. We were at least matched by an enemy Yak-1, and that KI-61 clearly outclimbed us at the start. And so this is something to be wary of. You do not have the best climb rate for your battle rating, with additional planes including the Spitfire Mark 1A and perhaps even the Messerschmitt 109 M1 being able to outclimb you. Nonetheless, our opponents have become distracted, and this allows us to set up an intercept against this SM-79 pursuing a friendly Junkers 88A4. Although here we also have to notice that in roughly level flight with a gradual portion of climb, we can see that the acceleration of the I-301 is rather deficient. Within a speed range of 200 to 300 km an hour, the acceleration is rather good, but as soon as you pass that 300 km an hour boundary, the acceleration begins to wane off rather dramatically. Still, we're able to very quickly eliminate the SM-79, thanks to the sheer firepower that we have in our nose cone, and so this offsets perhaps the lack of performance in terms of climb rate and overall acceleration to higher speeds. Again, as we level out and look around, we notice two Junkers 87s coming in from the spawn point, or at least one at the moment being a D3. We begin our pursuit, making sure that nothing's coming up at us, and we soon notice a B2 Junkers 87 also spawned in behind them. And here, as we push along at roughly 2,930 meters altitude, we can see once again that our acceleration is rather lacking as we head above 400 km an hour and towards 425. This is also realised as we go into a dive, with our speed picking up rather gradually. Nonetheless, we are able to achieve a grazing shot on the D3, and we loop above the Junkers 87 B2 in order to avoid spawn killing or being trapped or lured into the enemy spawn point. As we come around, we now emphasise the boom and zoom nature of the aircraft by diving down and seeing that our roll rate, which is great to begin with, being kept along all the way at 600 km an hour if not more, allowing us to direct our shots onto this Yak 1, setting their right wing on fire and allowing our second kill to occur. We then follow through with the rest of our momentum to attack the Junkers 87 B2 from earlier, achieving what is kill number 3, before pushing onto the Ki-45 And we can see here that a good portion of our energy is being retained in gradual flight, and so we can catch the Ki-45 with relative ease. We open fire with only our machine guns now, and the sheer wall of tracer going at the Ki-45 means that the pilot can very quickly react and dodge out of the way. We loop up over them and try to come back down for a second pass, of which the Ki-45 allows us to as they concentrate on a Messerschmitt 109 F1. We open fire with a 23mm cannon here, achieving what will be our 4th kill. And as we can see with some aimed fire towards the left wing spar, we are able to rip off the left wing with clear-cut efficiency and add another kill to our tally. We now notice an enemy Hurricane Mark 1 in the midst of a dogfight with a Yak 1, and so we decide to intercept and help out. At first our shots are off target, but as soon as we get our shots onto target we achieve our 5th and therefore our ace in a day with a pilot kill, thanks most likely to the armour piercing rounds in the 23mm cannon and the fragmentation incendiary. We then come around on the Junkers 87 D3 from earlier, being pursued by a friendly Messerschmitt 109 F1, and we achieve a critical hit with our 12.7mm machine guns. We have now reloaded our 7.62s, and we break off, having knocked out the D3's tail control. This will be at the very least an assist, if not a kill. And so now, down at lower altitudes, i.e. less than 300 meters, we have to fly away and reconsolidate our energy and therefore our position. Because the offset to the pure firepower and the sheer boom and zoom performance of the I-301 is the fact that this plane seems to struggle to regain its position once it's down at lower altitudes. With our 6th kill in the bag on that D3, we come around and notice an SB2M up incredibly high, a plane which it is going to take a very long time to set up a pass on, and so instead we turn our attentions towards the enemy fighters down low, and we come back to our point on the weakness of the engine and therefore the performance of the I-301. Due to the lack of acceleration in this plane as we go towards higher speeds, as we try to climb up after this SB2M here who breaks around and away from us, we can see that it is very difficult to catch even say a light bomber over a gradual period of time. Fortunately for us, the SB2M has practically come to us at this point, and so we can make a brief burst with our machine guns. Though we can see here, the SB2M is now getting away from us once again, and so we have to give up on this target for the time being. Looking around and noticing a Messerschmitt 109 climbing up against some friendly bombers of our own. And we are about to highlight once again the poor energy performance of the I-301 as we try to climb after this 109. We start our climb at 345 km an hour, and by the time we are approximately 1 km away from the target, or really 1.05 km away, we enter a stall here. And so, prolonged climbs, or prop hanging as it is properly known today, are not always advisable in the I-301. So instead, we have to turn our attentions back down to the fighters or enemy targets at the same altitudes as us, such as this Spitfire in front of us, or towards those below us, once again emphasising the boom and zoom style of play. Head-ons against targets can be very effective, and we see that here with the Spitfire Mark 1A, whereby we set their main fuselage on fire with our initial opening burst. Especially seeing as the Spitfire Mark 1 has to use the gun convergence, their machine guns on the wings, to prove effective against us, so we always have the advantage of having the nose-mounted armament. We break around here in order to attack another enemy fighter down low, this time a Ki-61 1 Coheen. We set them on fire, and as we break away, we can see that a Messerschmitt 19 ML1 may be coming around on the back of us. So instead, we just have to continue on our path and try not to bleed out any more energy. And whilst I've said that the energy conservation of this plane is decent coming out of the boom and zoom pass, there is also a counter to this, and that is in the midst of a turn fight, as we're about to see against this Spitfire Mark 1A, this goes against us, whilst having rather poor energy conservation with exacerbated manoeuvres. So my point here is that I am trying to evade the Spitfire Mark 1A's fire by going into the vertical and doing all of my manoeuvres on the rudder with some aileron adjustments when and where required. This causes the Spitfire Mark 1A to stall out, as their energy conservation is similar to our own, and they are probably using landing flaps to come around on us, bleeding their energy further. We achieve an assist, but at the same time we set the Spitfire on fire, and that may have led to a kill if they had been allowed to crash into the ground. So we can see when we are up against more manoeuvrable foes, as the I-301 does not have the best turn circle, we have to push towards the vertical, as by going into the vertical we can use the very powerful rudder on this aircraft and the great roll rate to stay out of the way of incoming fire, and at the same time eventually force our opponents to stall out and therefore fall victim to our guns or those of our friendlies. As we try to make an intercept on Messerschmitt 109 Emil here, the game comes to its end, and unfortunately we just cannot get that kill shot. Nonetheless, with this game now over, let's just take a look at the post-game stats. Therefore, we can see that our 8 kills and single assist allowed us to obtain 22,872 silver lions. On top of this, we accreted 1,954 research points, with 586 going towards our continued work on the LA-9. We hereby conclude our review of the I-301 by realising that it is an absolutely intimidating energy fighter, thanks to its brutal firepower in the nose cone and its very good control surface maintainability all the way up to speeds of 700 km an hour. This is where its great roll rate, decent elevator response and very powerful rudder begin to diminish rather rapidly. Nonetheless, when coming out of a dive, this plane is able to conserve a good portion of its energy, making it a difficult opponent to catch. This is offset, however, when we take a look at the plane in terms of its overall acceleration on the level. Above 300 km an hour, this plane struggles to accelerate to 400, and this is a rather long and drawn out process, as is its climbing rate being rather slow, meaning that attacking enemy bombers requires time and patience to set up. The acceleration below 300 km an hour is nothing to brag about, and this means when combined with poor energy retention on the horizontal, especially in turn fights, the I-301 is going to be a very difficult plane to handle by comparison with say a Spitfire Mark 1A or a Ki-43. Nonetheless, up against more manoeuvrable opponents in a turn fight, the I-301 can either win by balancing itself out on its rudder and the ailerons as we saw with the Spitfire, or by using its very slow and gradual nature to force an opponent to overshoot, as I have done so once or twice against Ki-43s. Nonetheless, we can see by comparison to the rest of our team we came second, because we made our way gradually around the map, used our moments of opportunity to a great extent, and cut our way through the furballs when and where we had the opportunity to do so. One final point to note out is that this plane is very comparable to the Lag-3A. Both planes maintain a very good controllability nature in a speed range of 350 to 450 km an hour. Yet, the Lag-3A, for its lack of firepower by comparison, seems to have a slightly higher acceleration and slightly better energy conservation, although at the same time its roll rate begins to dissipate at 550 km an hour. And this brings me on to the question, would I recommend going for this aircraft if another Get I-301 event came up? In my personal opinion, if you are a fan of the lag-free aircraft, then yes, you should go for this plane. Although I will be sticking to my Lag-3A, as I feel, for the lack of firepower by comparison, I've got slightly more manoeuvrability in the Lag-3A, and this is what makes me want to advocate that over the I-301. However, if you enjoy planes, which are a bit ponderous, but at the same time heavy-handed and able to leave a devastating and brutal mark on the battlefield, then the I-301 is the fighter for you. And so I've been TX141, and if you've enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, comment or subscribe for future War Thunder videos on my channel. Yet until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care and good luck in the skies.